Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my first time really meeting the group. I used to assist Professor Beatty, but to be on the stage myself is a very good honor. And I said to Selena as she was sitting down, I don't know what I can add because she did a perfect analysis of the differences. And I think, yeah, very much so. And Professor Beatty says often that too often we are, as a board member, looking at oversight and insight, but what our role is foresight. And for that, what does it take? It takes to get involved, to learn, to accept that even if we have a great experience, we have to deepen it by really getting to know the organization we serve, because that's what we do. We serve an organization for its sustainability and to go forward. So I'll talk about where I come from. And for me, I'll make a difference in a way that the difference between a board member and an executive shouldn't be that black and white. It has to meet. Otherwise, the future of an organization won't be very solid, will not be smiling. It will be something that is harsh homeworks, where in fact we're there together when we're sitting, because it's not only the board by itself. We'll meet the CFO, we'll meet the HRO more and more than we used to. So we are in contact with the executives, and we've got to, as a board member, to develop the collective mind that will make us really ensure a future. I had the chance of having a very diverse career. Some might say that because I was chosen in different roles, yes, but also because I started my career wanting to be in television. I wanted to work in public affairs. I had studied in sociology, did a master in environmental studies, and really that was my dream since I was a little girl. Problem is, when I got the job, I didn't like it. And what do you do when you're okay? I'm not saying good, but okay. And yet you're not really happy. You go through the motion. Is it sufficient in life? When you start, you're about, 27 by the time I had finished all my diploma. So my career has been like a journey. I would be that way for all my life. In a way, I would start a new job with great passion and enthusiasm. But once my garden had flourished, the maintenance is not me at all. I need new challenges. I need new adventures. I need to learn. I'm a curious person, and a lot has to do with the purpose. What are we there to do? I used to say, I'm not there just to create profit. That doesn't excite me. Don't be worried. I worry about profit, but that cannot be my only motivation. And I think that's why I don't see such a difference between being a director and an executive. You've got to have quality. You have to have governance in the executive life as much as a director. It's important that you have a purpose. It used to be a mission, a vision, but a purpose is more than strictly a mission and a vision. And that's what brings everybody around the table. I had the chance in my life to start in university as an executive. I was a dean, not teaching, an administrative dean. And I saw the importance of speaking up our mind with respect. Accepting that you have to learn, because one day I would be with the director of the dance department, the following day the chemistry department, and yet at one point they would all be in committees for which we had to take decision, and we had to really be able to listen to the arguments. And if we felt that it was a better idea that came from another person, we had the responsibility to create a consultation. So it's not different from a board life. Unless you have consultation, common mind, you will not succeed in the future. It's very important. So I had the chance to start my career in a university. At one point, there was a possibility of becoming a vice principal in communication, and I would have been excellent. But my principal, the president of the university, thought I was doing such a good job where I was. You know the glass ceiling? It was not a glass ceiling because I was a woman. It was a glass ceiling because my superior didn't want any trouble. He didn't have any trouble when I was doing my job. So he'd rather go for a new person in his team than changing me job, which was stupid. The first weekend, I cried. I really was suffering from that decision. But the Monday morning, I was on my address book looking for people I could contact in order to let them know I was leaving the university. Trust me, I'm not stupid. I didn't leave before finding something. But I was in the mindset of looking for a new challenge. And did I find it? I did. I was chosen as a CEO of a broadcaster entity, an educational broadcaster in Quebec. It was ironic in a way, but that's probably why I got the job. My thesis in communication had been on that very broadcaster. So I had a good idea about the minute I came in, what I would like to change. But could I change by myself? Of course not. Cannot just say to the team that was there, oh, I've listened and studied your entity and this is what we ought to do. No. We'll do a strategic planning exercise. You've never done that, we'll do it together. And we'll listen to people from the staff, we'll listen from the employees, but we'll listen also to our stakeholders. The shareholder is very important, but he's not the only one. So that training for me was a good entry into the world of being a board director, because you cannot only listen to your executives. You've got to have an ear for what's happening, the changes, but also now with social media, everybody has an opinion on everything. That is not always welcome, we'll agree, but you've got to be aware. That doesn't mean you've got to take that as the new essence, but you have to be aware of the forces around you. Stakeholders is much more undetermined than it used to be. It used to be your clientele, your employees. As long as the shareholder was happy, everybody was content. Well, not today anymore. So that was a learning I got from my years as a broadcaster. From there, like it happens in the corporate world, there was a change of shareholder after 8 years as being CEO of that broadcaster. A change of party in the province of Quebec. I had been chosen by a different government, so the new government felt we were not of the same ideas, and they thanked me for my years of service, but I had to go. I left with lots of sorrow. I was really happy with that life, but was open to a new adventure. I started in consulting in KPMG. It's a good in-between position. And from there, I was appointed CEO and chair, which is a bad governance rule, but that was the way it was at the time. I was at the time chairperson and CEO of an organization of 450 people who were the regulator for broadcasting and telecom from 96 to 2001. That may seem far away for many of you, but that was the time of opening up to competition in telephony, for convergence, for consolidation of undertakings, for internet happening. Should we regulate internet? That was the big question of the time. So it was fascinating. I didn't know anything about telecom. I had been a broadcaster. So what do? You make sure that you're well surrounded, that you have in your team people that do complement you. Also, good lesson for being a board director. You were saying, Selena, that it's important that diversity is not only about as many men and women and make sure that we have the ethnicity, that we have the representation. What is important is also the backgrounds. What do we bring to a table? A team is a team as long as you're not a reproduction of one image. It's important to have different colors. As you see, I have put my colors today to make sure that I illustrate that we cannot all be on the same mode, on the same model. But that's true in management as it is in board life. So as the CRTC, that was the name of my organization, Commission of Broadcasting and Telecom, I learned so much about diversity. I had to take, I'm French speaking, as you can see, I'm from Quebec, but the organization was for the whole of Canada, from one ocean to the other. That's a large country, I can tell you. I've done a lot by train, but mostly by plane. All our reflection and decisions were based on public process. Public process, many were in writing, but many important ones, for example, the model for opening up to competition in telephony, that was in public hearings from city to city. So I've listened with my colleagues to a lot of experiences from Canadians, but from also businesses all across the country. You can imagine a broadcaster in Toronto or Montreal is very different from Saskatoon, which is a more rural type of city. And they still have the same ambition, the same dream. So how can you, at the end, listen to all those wishes, in a way, and realities, and come to a structure or a framework that will be able to adapt to the different realities that everyone experiences. It's very difficult to be so specific for everyone, but that you don't prevent anyone from accomplishing more and contributing more to the world of communication in Canada. So that was a real challenge, and being at the same time a CEO and chair of a board, that was definitely a line that I was crossing all the time. I was, nose in, ends out, they say in our training for being a good director. Well, when you are both at the same time, you've got to really take a step back and listen to others. If we talk a lot about communication, the importance of expressing ourselves, but communication starts by listening, learning, and then only can you really make a point that will be listened to and contribute to a consensus at the end. So I spent 5 years in that role that I've enjoyed very much, worked very hard, slept very little. And after 5 years, I felt that I couldn't continue with the second mandate with the same passion, the same involvement. Not that I had seen all. The proof of AI today shows that I had not seen all, but I had seen enough that I felt I would not be as excited, as enthusiastic, so that I wouldn't serve neither the board itself and neither the inspiration and the mobilization of the teams of the executive. So I decided to leave the CRTC and went back into consulting, which is always a good refuge for me. It's a kind of time where you take time to reflect on what you've been living, what are the lessons learned, and what is the aspiration for the next chapter. It's very important. And my next chapter, I wouldn't have been able to tell you when I was young, dreaming of being in public affairs and television. That was never in my mind, but what I did, I was approached to come as head of all the chambers of commerce in the province of Quebec. And for me, chambers of commerce were like things of the past, of the 20th century. My father was very involved, not I. And I felt that, no, I couldn't really breed and learn and go forward with that position. But the chair of the board convinced me he wanted to change the organization. That was the will of the executive committee. They wanted a new approach, a new vision, much more into the time and be capable of responding to the necessities for the businesses in regions of Quebec as much as in Montreal, the financial, the corporate world. How can you reconcile and how can you influence, because that's the role of chambers of commerce, other than creating the networking opportunities, you also have mainly to influence bureaucrats and politicians. Big job, because they're so right in their pursuit, and you've got to come to them not only with words, you've got to come to them with good arguments, good dossier, and that you have to take time to have done the consultation so that you have not only you bringing the message, but you're sure. We had at the time 130 local chambers. And we were making sure that if I was coming into a parliamentary committee or in a cabinet or meeting bureaucrats, I was making sure, we were making sure, that we'd have other local chambers who would come to the same people and deliver the same message with their own words, their own experience, but the percolation of the same message, that could change the world. But it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes really solid evidence that what you're putting forward is really for the best of all and not the best of you. So that was a great, great experience. As you can imagine, I eventually said yes, since I'm talking about that. But they had to really make a good sale to me, that not only would I have the latitude to make changes, but that I would have a board that was really open to change, that we would be collaborating to transform and make that organization much more modern, much more contemporary, not aggressive, never aggressive, but out there, outspoken, and always respectful, never attacking anyone personally. The ideas, though, that can be attacked with demonstration. And that was really an experience that for me brought the best of all my career, because we started to be mostly concerned with the budget of the provincial government and the federal government, but we eventually transformed the organization with 20 committees, meaning that we regrouped local chambers and corporate world on different business lines like manufacturing, mining, energy. It was endless. As long as we had members prepared to give us not only money for our membership, but to share their knowledge and help us that we could not reproduce their own studies, their own research, but we could work together to make it in a way palatable for bureaucrats and politicians. So it was a wonderful adventure that I left in 2017. And from then on, in 2017, I became strictly a board director. But I had been exercising directorship since I was in television. I was not allowed while I was there because the shareholder was the government of Quebec to go in the corporate world, but I was allowed to go for the opera, the theater, the hospital, and I accepted with great pleasure because my thirst for learning was still there. And that was a good complement with broadcasting. Broadcasting is interested in many domains, so it was a way of really pushing forward or further my learning abilities and learning experience. But when you're in those kind of environments, of course, the blur between executive and director, it's not clear because usually they don't have enough money. So they use your network in order for sponsoring. They use your network for marketing. They use your network for HR abilities. So it's very difficult to have a clean cut between your director role and the executive role. But yet, you've got to understand that when you're in the hospital, you're not a doctor. When you're in the theater, you're not an actor, although sometimes you can be. And when you're in the opera, you cannot be the singer, that's for sure. And so you cannot be the programmer. And that's the blur that you have to make sure is clear, to clarify that you're not coming because you enjoy, of course, opera, you enjoy theater, but you're not the expert, and you've got to leave the expertise to the executives and bring all the other considerations to strengthen the team. So that was good training experience I've found, to have those non-for-profit experience, but not as clear as coming to the corporate world, of course. And in that sense, I took a class in McGill that was in the inspiration of what Rotman School had done with the founder, Mr. Beatty, of the governance course for directors, although I think more executives should take it too. It's not only to be a director. You cannot be a good director if you don't have good executives. It goes together. It's a marriage in some way. When you understand as an executive what the director can bring, that means you can go for it. We were laughing, Selena and I, as we were taking a coffee. It's so easy as an executive to manipulate your board. Very easy. You just kind of give thousands of pages to make sure they get lost. And they'll complain that there were too many pages last weekend to read, but other than that, they'll be lost. And they don't always have time to dig and talk to a few people to kind of make sure that they have the most important messages you wanted to convey. No, it's very important that the executives have at heart and at mind to go and get the best of the directors so that together what you bring, and it's easy to understand, you'll have a crisis task force if there's a crisis coming to the company, either a IPO or a moment of crisis, then you come together. But that should be the come together every time you meet. No one has time to lose, to waste. Executives are very busy to make things happen, and directors have not only the responsibility of that business, they have many other tasks. Either they're executives themselves or they have other boards. So time is really the essence. You really have to make the best out of it, and unless you work together, it cannot happen. Of course, Professor Beatty will talk to you of the necessity of the chair and the CEO together. They can make things happen in that sense, but in fact, it should be the state of mind of everybody. It should be the state of mind of all directors, should be the state of mind of all executives participating into a board because they make presentation. In French, we'll say it's a mal nécessaire. We have no choice. The board is necessary in order to have a good governance. It's a mandatory, so better do the best out of it rather than suffering that, oh my God, next week is the board, oh my God, 2 days of board, oh, the committees. It should be exciting. well, I'm exaggerating here, but certainly it should be looked as an opportunity. And in order to make it more cordial, I won't say friendly, but cordial, I had in all my experiences, and I had many because after the non-for-profit I started when I came to the Chamber of Commerce, I was allowed into the corporate world. I mean, my board has allowed me to do corporate work as a director. And the minute I came to a chair position, I always did two things. First, a cocktail with executives and board members during the 2 days. Sometimes a luncheon, maybe during the close to the annual assembly, I would do that. But with the directors, when I was chair, I would have and host dinner at my place, cooking, not having a caterer, cooking for my colleagues. And I always felt that it gave a tone to our discussion. Those nights, very rarely would we solve the problem of the tomorrow meeting, but we set the tone that we could understand one another, we could laugh together, we could have a glass of wine together, and that really set the tone for the coffee the next morning. And that helps because we don't have all the same mind. It'd be so boring if we were all aligned with the same perceptions and analysis. We have different background, we come from different industries, so it's very important that we get to share together. It's over the respect, it's not only the respect, is the interest for others. And making sure that when we come to the meeting the next day, we are already in that way of perceiving our colleagues. Of course, as chair, I would also know exactly, or almost, where would I have some obstruction on some ideas, and I would work upstream. I wouldn't wait for the meeting to solve some issues. I would call my colleagues regularly. A sounding board. Did you read the material? What do you think? Do you think there's a problem with this? What's your thoughts? So, yes, I had surprises once in a while, but mostly by doing that, I would be prepared to animate a conversation, not kill the conversation, because it's important to hear what others have to say, because it enriches the decision at the end. But if you are able to get the perception of where it's going to come from, it's less stressful. And because it's less stressful, you're more welcoming to it, and you can convey that welcoming sense to your colleagues. It's not something you master the first day. It's something you practice every day. And that's why I say it cannot be black and white. As an executive, you've got to be the same. The emphasis is different. But if you don't share the same set of values, if you don't share the same vision for the business, you'll have a hard time going forward. And you'll have a hard time having fun. And unless you have fun, you cannot be the best of who you are and what you can contribute. It's got to be a pleasure. It's got to be a passion. In order to do so, you've got to know yourself very well. Know where you're good and where you're not. When you have a possibility to bring other people to reinforce, strengthen, and there are times where it's not sufficient and you've got to accept to look for another board or another challenge. It's time to leave at one point. And in Canada right now, there's a chair of the board of an important corporate company who's been there almost for, 19 years. I find at one point that it's time to go. And it's an opening door to the diversity. Of course, if the people who know the business very well, who know the colleagues, I've been through all the phases, remain in the seats, very difficult to create space for the newcomers that often women are. It's much better to limit the number of years in those jobs than quotas. I'm not in favor of quotas. I've always thought I had been appointed for because of a quota. I don't think I would have sit in my chair very comfortably. I'm not sure I would have felt really chosen. It's important to feel that I'm 77, so you can imagine when I started my career, there weren't many women. I was often the only one. So I always felt you have to choose me in order to be there. So you've got to be good. You've got to work hard. You've got to be pleasant to others. You cannot be always just a fist on the table. You've got to learn how to, and I don't play golf. Well, in Canada, it's really a negative thing because the directors usually play golf together, and that's how they kind of, did you know about that company is looking for someone. So us as women, we've got to do the same but differently. In Canada, what we did for diversity, rather than quotas at first, is in Montreal, we created a group that we called the Ritz Ladies for the Ritz Hotel. We would meet every Friday morning for breakfast. But there was not an agenda, there was not, you couldn't come, you don't come. But from time to time, you will have meet all the women that were already in executive position. Not yet that many on directorship, but the executives. And I'm talking now in the 80s. In the 80s, we weren't that many. Probably we were about 25, 30 women. But slowly we became more, and slowly a few of us started to be on boards. And we got the idea that every third month on the Friday, each of us would invite a man that was a high executive, CEO, or chair of a board, to meet our friends. And that way, and we weren't having a breakfast sitting down. We would have like a cocktail, but with coffee and orange juice, and mimosa some mornings, which is important. And to introduce interesting women with high capacities, executive roles already, to men who didn't know them. Because so often the excuse is, oh, I don't know. No, there isn't any. I don't know them. Well, come to our breakfast, you'll get to know them. And that really helped. I'm not saying it went from 1 to 10, but certainly that excuse that we don't know women, they've got to know women. And of course, our group as women enlarged over the years, and this group is still existing. Okay. And one initiative we had, unfortunately, that I missed, the other opportunity in Canada for men to meet, if it's not golf, it's fishing. They go fishing. And of course, in all my years of being an executive, may I say I was never invited. And I used to say, why don't you invite me? Oh, you don't know what's happening there. You know, kind of, in Canada, we'll say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You don't repeat it. Well, it's the same with fishing, so we weren't welcome at all. So we decided, the Ritz ladies, to create a fishing experience that we did deserve it to, and we didn't invite the men. I couldn't go to that initiative, but one thing is sure, I'm not sure that it was a lot about fishing. And we were capable of having good wine as well, and we were catered. That was, but there is that sense that we have to find ways to not create two worlds apart. The directorship and the executive, they have to work together. So the more they know about one another, the more the diversity will be natural, not so estranged. And also, even for diversity of different experiences and backgrounds and competencies, this idea of really bringing both worlds together, the better. It cannot be them and us. It's got to be us. It's very important, but it's easier to say than to practice. My last chairmanship was, I was chair up to April 25, chair of the passenger railroad company in Canada. Telecom, transportation, the same, because it's inspired by the same legislation. And it's about networking, and it's about clientele, it's about rates, it's very regulated. It's two worlds that are very alike. And in that role, at first it was, I won't say easy, but I don't know anything about rail, you can imagine, cars and trains. So I learned a lot. But I thought it would be, being a crown corporation, it would be an easy job, or somewhat easy. There might be cuts on our subsidies, there might be winter storm where the snowstorm would create problems for our passengers, but I didn't envisage anything really terrible. Well, there was. Because the process of appointing in that world is not left to the board. It's left to a committee with people from cabinet, bureaucrats that don't know a thing about train, even less than I, and don't know anything about living in an organization that is not the government. So it was quite difficult to come to a consensus for the appointment. The first person that was appointed was a lady, a nice lady, lawyer, but was not the right set of skills for the job that had to be done. And it was really difficult for the board to support her, for her team to support her. And it took 3 years. We had the pandemic like everybody else. And after the pandemic, that was impossible to pursue. She leaves. We find a wonderful man that had a wonderful career. He comes. After a year, we see the mistake that had been done again. He had everything. He was an MBA, had been in transportation all his life, knew trains, but was toxic. So imagine someone toxic for his executives and toxic for the board. How can the relationship of CEO and chair, that has to be a key to heaven, can not be a key to hell? That's what happened. It was really difficult. And you don't foresee that when you accept a board position, but you have to manage it, and you've got to make sure that passengers are served all the same, and that you kind of convince the shareholders mostly of the importance of going forward, buying new trains and getting their attention. And yet you have a knot there that you cannot unknot unless the government will accept to create the seizure to stop the relationship with the CEO, because we weren't allowed to fire him. We were not the ones hiring, so we were not allowed to fire either. So it was very difficult. And I say, it's true for a man who comes on boards, or women mostly, who thinks it's like heaven. You know, I'm an executive, I've worked so hard, I'll go as a director. It will be exciting, fun, I don't have to work that many hours. Well, it's true until you have challenges, until you have crisis. And you've got to be prepared to support the executive team, but even to support your colleagues. Some will leave the boat. They didn't come for that. They came for, just the name on the CV and their reputation. Well, in order to get her reputation, it starts by the work. So that's why I say there's a difference between the two roles, but it depends on the moment. There are stages in an organization that requires that we cross the border more than we think is necessary when we get the recognition of good governance. It is practical exercise that we have to be prepared to live, and it's fun to live. So I'll leave you with this, and I think we're moving to the panel now.
I think you're moving to a break.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well done.